This paper was presented at the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium 2025. Video coverage of this paper is provided by Highways News and sponsored by Mobius Networks, AGD, Smart Micro UK, TRL Software, Traffic Group Signals, AD Electronics, and Four-Way Consulting.
Good, yeah, so we've had an introduction, so I don't need to do too much more of that, but yeah, like I said, my name is Tim Wray. I'm Sales Director UK, Ireland and Cyprus for Kapsch, and that's a long story. Trudie?
And I'm Trudie Udell, and I work for National Highways. I'm the Director of Operational Systems Integration. If you cut me in half, I definitely bleed operations, even though I now work in digital services.
Yeah, and perhaps worth mentioning that you've had a very long history of this project.
Ah, yes, we are going to be talking about CHARM, which I can't remember what it stands for, but it is the replacement of our traffic management system, and I will be telling you all about that in a minute.
I think one of the things that Trudie said to me this morning was that, Tim, I'm going to keep you honest, which might result in me being beaten up for the next 15 minutes, but we're going to find out how that goes. A little bit about Kapsch. When I joined Kapsch a couple of years ago, people would say to me, Tim, how's it going? And I think the honest answer was, do you know what, in the UK, it's the largest traffic company nobody's ever heard of. And I'm trying to do something about that. But what I would say is, if you go to Europe, we're a tolling company, right? If you come to the UK, I represent a tolling company that doesn't actually do an awful lot of tolling in the UK, because guess what, our roads are free. That split is very different, but if we look at the split in the UK, I think I'm pretty accurate to say that we are around about 3/4 traffic management and around about 1/4 tolling. If you were to move across to Europe or the world, which is 4,000 people worldwide, Kapsch, that switch would be the other way around. It's probably easiest for me to summarise Kapsch in the UK and Ireland with our 4 projects. We're going to talk about CHARM in a second, and we're doing something very similar for our friends in Ireland, TII in Ireland. And for traffic and for tolling, we do 2 things. We do traditional, what we might call traditional tolling, which is the M50, which is the ring road around Dublin. So that's kind of our bread and butter. And we also provide, with our friends at Capita, we're also providing the back office for the ULEZ system in London, which is sort of a Marmite project. Good.
So over to me, and it's really nice to see so many ladies in the audience. Yay! So yes, I am a cat woman. I do love my cats, Whatsit and Twiglet, in case you were asking, because I always talk about them. So look, I work for National Highways. I love working for this organisation. It is a fantastic place to work. You kind of know what we do. We manage the strategic road network. Now that doesn't just mean, we just look out for everybody. We set signs and signals, we respond to incidents, we send traffic officers, we patrol, we do an awful lot to ensure the safety of our public and our customers. And that includes all road users and road workers. We've got lots of staff, as you can see. I think it's closer to 7,000 now. There are 4,500 miles worth of roads, which is nowhere near as much as there is in the whole of the UK, but obviously we end up having more of the traffic on our network than anybody else. The most important thing about the CHARM programme in particular is we actually have so much technology on our road. Our roads are safe. They have always been safe, but they are made even safer with the technology that we have on our roads to ensure that we can respond to incidents. And the most important thing about what we do is we connect our country, okay? We allow people to get to work, to buy goods, to transport all of the things that we use every day. That's me.
The CHARM programme, just Kapsch and NH, right? Well, clearly not. This is part of an ecosystem. I've mentioned a couple of our big partners there, but there's an awful lot more out there. I think I'm at the end of this project, right? I'm 2 years in, and so what I did was I took a lot of learning from the guys at Kapsch that have been doing this from day one, and what they told me is one of the great challenges, because this is such a long, as you're going to find out from Trudie, this is such a long project. Things change, right? And what people do change. So, you know, what our friends, let's say at One Advance, were doing, perhaps maybe be doing by somebody else now. Capgemini, a new name that's in this project. It's not something that was involved so much before. So what a great challenge we've had is to say there are elements that Kapsch were doing, for example, which are now being done by somebody else, or vice versa. But old habits die hard, right? So we've got to kind of have a system which allows us to say, actually, this is a change and this is how we're going to adapt to that change. On a human level, it's always better to try and establish relationships between these people when things are going well. Because when things aren't going well, and guess what, we're going to find out, I'm sure, in a second, where things haven't gone well, that's when those relationships are tested. And if you've already established a mentality of openness, a mentality of we can work this thing together, as opposed to crossing our arms and saying, actually, it's not our fault. As long as it's not our fault, we're okay. Bearing in mind, NH are essentially the system integrator here, so they're the headmaster that's overseeing all this. That's the real learning that we've taken from this, which is create those relationships in the good times, and they will endure in the bad times.
And actually, taking that point about National Highways being the systems integrators here, that was never really the intention. It just evolved that way. And mainly because actually some of our contracts that we put in place weren't the ones that we really should have probably gone for. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project. I joined National Highways in 2017 in ops, doing something completely different, when the ops director asked me if I'd just have a look, see what's going on in Charm. Yeah, of course I will. Not a problem. So I went over to Charm in 2019. The project had already been going for a number of years. It was meant to take about 18 months. Once developed, tested, it was meant to take about 18 months to roll out to every region. We've got 7. We call them regional operations centres. We've just finished. I mean, we didn't really even celebrate as much as we should have. But it took 5 years to actually roll out. And the project was blighted with problems. But as Tim said, actually a lot of it comes because things change, right? Smart motorways was fairly new. That kind of happened in between. COVID happened in between. We even had stopped vehicle detection that we had to put on smart motorways as a result of our smart motorways. So none of that was kind of envisaged at the very beginning of the project. And with all projects, you make sure you focus on the scope. You don't want scope creep because you want to get it delivered. But actually, when you're an organisation that needs to serve the whole country, we have to be ensuring that we're as safe as we possibly can be. So it did take 5 years. We did finally roll out to the final region in the southeast, yay, in June. But like I say, some of the reasons where we ended up pausing, when I say pause, we didn't just pause for a month or so. It was a whole year or 18 months worth of more development work. So we had to integrate stopped vehicle detection into our Dynac solution, the Charm solution. And there was obviously a major incident in 2022, which I almost don't want to talk about, but essentially things went wrong from a technical perspective to the point where we needed to pause the whole programme, understand what happened, and ensure that it was never going to happen again. But that took a long time to resolve, so it was a major technical incident. So yeah, didn't always go to plan.
When you speak to any sort of senior person in NH and say, you know, what are the big highlights and what are the things that have stuck in your mind in these last few years, they'll come up with a few things. I don't know if you guys can get what these are. That is a real picture. Does anybody know what that is? So that's the beast from the east. How can you plan for that? Big technical problem. As Trudie mentions, we can plan for that. And of course, any presentation like this can't really go too far without mentioning COVID. When these things happen, the people that matter, the people that are having to speak about this, at that point don't want to talk about the technical detail. They don't want to see people pointing at other people from different organisations. They want to know what the Daily Mail is going to ask them and what's going to be on their website in an hour and a half. And that's where the real skill of all the guys that we've already mentioned really comes in, which is give them the confidence to be able to say the things that they're about to say to be true. If we start saying furry words that politicians might say, then all of a sudden delays are 18 months. It would have been much better for us to have confidence to say, we understand this is the steps we're taking, and this is going to be the outcome of that. And that's kind of a huge piece of lesson learned that we've certainly taken from a supplier side.
Okay. So I'm going to talk just a little bit more about some of the challenges that we already have, and we have them today. When we want to make a change, it could be a patch, it might be an upgrade, it might be some user enhancements. Whenever we want to do those things, we have to do an outage today. So the way we've architected this beast of a tool hasn't actually worked in our favour. So we are looking to see what we can do there. But it does mean that we have to have planned outages. Now, a planned outage means that we can mitigate against certain things. You know, we can send more traffic officers. We can have more eyes on the road. We can use our backup systems for CCTV. So we can still monitor the network. But a planned outage does mean that our operators are hands off, okay? They can't do anything. So that's okay. We can manage that. We don't want too many of them, but we can manage it. An unplanned outage, it's a disaster. Of course it's a disaster. It means we've suddenly got no capability of setting signs and signals or responding to incidents on our road because we've got an unplanned incident. Operators hate situations like this. We hate situations like this. So they're really bad. But actually, what we find is the worst for our operators in particular is when we have degradation in the system. And when I say degradation, imagine you are sitting in a control room and you see a car that has stopped in a live lane on the motorway and you want to set a red X to protect that family. And the system has latency and you just can't get there fast enough. That's what our operators sometimes have to go through. So we end up having to, we do an awful lot, just as Tim was saying, talking with our suppliers to say, why are we seeing this degradation? Why can't we set the signs and signals quick enough to be able to protect that family in that car? And for me, the feeling of those operators seeing what they see on those screens through the CCTV is heartbreaking. So I need to make sure that whatever we do, we are putting the safety mechanisms in place and a performance system for operators to be able to do their jobs. That's all they want to do. They just want to protect the public. So that's why we need to make sure that we get that trust back from our operators, that we are doing everything we can to ensure they have their performance tools to do their job.
There's a huge human level in this discussion, and I agree with you, Trudie. There's no doubt that 14th of June this year was a big deal for Kapsch, big deal for the project. In the eyes of our client, charm's finished. In the eyes of our client, it's now the ATMS system, which is great. But you know, the delivery continues. You know, we haven't moved anybody. It's the same volume of Kapsch people delivering against the project, even though it is now essentially England-wide. Because demands change. You know, we run over 50 change requests a year from the client. You know, there is a huge amount. The roads change. You know, I'm a Hull guy. There's a huge project in Hull at the minute, nearly finished. Darren, you'll know it's nearly finished. All of these changes have huge ramifications for the ATMS system. And then, quite rightly, we are under constant pressure from the client to say what's next, you know, where is the next innovation, etc. And we have plans in place to present that. So when we talk about what that might be, clearly all of the same discussions that you guys will be having for the next 2 days always come up. Connected vehicles. How does a connected vehicle live on the highways in 10 years' time?
And I am going to bother him now.
Oh.
We have got a red light.
We have got
speed up.
Yes. Okay. Right. Well, I'll leave it at that.
I think this is the last slide in any case. So when Tim was just talking about that, it used to be the charm project. I never want to hear the word charm again in my life. You know, we talk about it and it's a poison chalice. However, I have lived and breathed it and loved pretty much every minute of it. We are now the ATMS. It's the ATMS system, Advanced Traffic Management System. But what we've done is we've changed it from a product to a service. So we are now working in a service portfolio environment. And that means that we can think about, well, actually, what does that need to look like in the next 10, 15 years? What do our roads look like in 2040? Do we even need gantries in the future? Is it all going to get sent straight to the cars? So one of the things that we need to make sure that we do is enhance and exploit some of the capabilities that our products have in order to provide a better service for our operators and our customers. And that's pretty much it.
Great success. 50 minutes, only got one telling off.
Thank you both.
Thank
I think we could smuggle in a question if it was fast and got a fast answer. Yep. Oh, you're very shy.
There's
yes.
I wasn't really clear on the project.
I wasn't really clear on what the project was.
So it was replacing, national highways in operations, we set signs and signals, we send traffic officers, we, red X's, 50s, 40s, all the MIDA stuff. So it was replacing the old HATM system, which, believe it or not, stood for Highways Agency Traffic Management System. It's a traffic management system. It's to ensure that we can set signs and signals on our road and lots of other stuff too. But it was replacing a very old product. That you speak to some operators, the ones that have been there for a while, go, can we have the old system back? Of course they're going to say that. Nobody really likes change, do they? But it's definitely more, we've made it a lot more integrated, which comes with benefits, but also comes with quite a lot of challenges too.
Thank you.
There is a paper in the big book of papers on the desk. Thank you both.
Thank
you,
you.
guys.